The following presentation is brought to you by Leadership Jacksonville. Major funding provided by the Schultz Foundation.
Hello, I'm Kent Lindsay. Welcome to this edition of the Jacksonville Legacy Series, presented by Leadership Jacksonville. Community trustee, civic patron, father of the modern-day legislature, vice chairman of the Federal Reserve Board, business leader, husband, and father are just a few of the titles that belong to the late Honorable Frederick Schultz. Born in Jacksonville on January 26, 1929, Mr. Schultz became an unfailing leader, an innovator in our community. Over the next half hour, we will talk with Mr. Schultz via one-on-one interviews taped right before his death in 2009. We will understand through his words and through interviews with his closest friends and confidants why he did what he did for our community and how our community is what it is today because of his tireless leadership. Join us now as we learn more about the life, the leadership, and the legacy of the Honorable Frederick H. Schultz.
You were a young boy, your mom asked you a question. She asked you what you wanted to do with your life.
Yeah.
And you mentioned to her that you wanted to help people.
Yeah.
What was it that when you were a young boy, what was it that made you want to help people?
You know, I haven't the vaguest idea. I've thought about that and wondered. She and I were just having a pleasant conversation, and she said, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And I said, "I want to help other people." And I have no idea why that popped out, but it just, it just came out. I'd always liked the idea of trying to be nice to other people and trying to be helpful and all of that kind of thing. So, where it came from, I really have no idea.
You also said, I remember in a Florida Trend article that I read, that she never let you forget.
That's right. She never did. She thought it was a pretty good idea.
Well, tell me about your mom and your dad, how they raised you.
Well, they were both old parents when I was born when they were 40 years old. They were both very well educated, particularly my mother for that period, because she actually finished college. And women didn't finish college in 1910. My father got his law degree from Harvard in 1912 or 13, I can't remember which. And then he went to France in the First World War. He was an artillery officer, interestingly enough, as I was an artillery officer in Korea.
Well, what kind of influence did your father have on your life?
My father was an extraordinary man. He really was. He and I didn't get along all that well when I was young, mostly because he was working very hard. As a young man, I wasn't all that responsible. I was in training to be the playboy of the Western world, so I wasn't reading enough and paying enough attention to the more important things. But when I got older, I began to, I put away childish things. I had left law school, gone to work for the Barnett Bank, and then had started doing a little venture capital work. And my dad kept an office downtown. He and I joined forces. For a year, we worked together. That year was probably the greatest learning experience of my life. And So it was a real blow to me when he died.
Fred cares about people, really cares about people. And he knows that he was to the manner born, and that it is his obligation to share with those who have less. When he was in the legislature, when he was in his community life, and every place he went, he was committed to improving the lives of those people.
What drives you to want to help people and to continue to help people? What does that give you by you giving?
Well, I found that it gives me enormous satisfaction. I do it because I like it. And it very quickly became a big part of my life. I did some civic and charitable work when I was working with my father, and he did a good deal in those days. And then after he died, first thing I did was to be president of the Downtown Council. I learned a lot about how to work together, and one of the interesting things that happened to me at that time was that we had Axe Handle Saturday in downtown Jacksonville, the race riots. Because I was president of the Downtown Council, I got involved in that, particularly with the young black activists who were very much involved in that. People like Alton Yates and Rodney Hurst. Yeah, I started learning a lot about the problems of the community.
Fred could get any two people talking to each other. When Fred got involved, then he was able to get members of the Chamber of Commerce to select membership for the biracial committee.
That spurred on an additional interest in being involved in civic life in this community. I'd never been interested much in politics, but had a good friend who was one of Ferris Bryant's chief supporters in this area. He got me interested, so I did some work with Ferris Bryant, and when Ferris was elected governor, he appointed me to the Jacksonville Expressway Authority. And we were very active at that time. We built a couple of the bridges here. We built both the Shands Bridge and the Hart Bridge. After spending a couple of years on the Expressway Authority, it became obvious to me that if I really wanted to accomplish something, I had to get in an elected position.
Yeah, well, Fred at a very young age got elected to the House of Representatives, and what I think a lot of people really in Florida don't realize, that really the most powerful person in the state is the Speaker of the House of Representatives, really more so than the governor, and more so than the President of the Senate. And Fred got in it in '63, and within a short time was designated as the Speaker designee. You know, it's usually a year or two out. So you're powerful during that window of time too. And the Speaker really is kind of a dictator. I mean, whatever they want to have happen happens, and whatever they don't want to have happen won't happen. And he kept a good eye out for Jacksonville. He'd long had his heart in education. He had an Ivy League education and really appreciated what that meant to people. And Jacksonville was behind the times. The school system had lost accreditation. We didn't have a public university. The state community college needed a major restructuring. He knew that for Jacksonville to get somewhere, it needed a vibrant educational system. We needed to turn around the disaccredited school system. We needed a community college system that would help students with trades and to begin their education. We needed a public university as well.
After I had lost the race for the United States Senate, Reuben Askew and I had talked a lot about what needed to be done in education, and I wrote him a long letter suggesting that there be a state commission set up to study it. He agreed and set it up and made me chairman. And under some very favorable circumstances, I was by this time on vacation in Europe with my family. He tracked me down and said he wanted to be chairman. He was going to appoint this thing, wanted me to be chairman, and he said, I want you to come back right now because we need to put it together. And I said, Reuben, I got all my kids over here. I can't come back right now. He said, well, if you come back right now, I'll let you pick who goes on the commission. And I said, Reuben, that's a dirty thing to do. I said, you know I can't resist that. So at any rate, my family was very nice and let me return, and I took on that job.
It wasn't a part-time job with Fred. Caring for others is a part of his life. And that led him into education, because in education, he could see how his efforts would be rewarded by having a better educated, trained community where people could work and people could make a living. And that was important to Fred, very important to Fred.
And really, I think what has impressed me when you look back on Fred's life, he was all give and no take. You know, even when he was speaker, he wasn't just bringing turkeys to Jacksonville. He was doing things that really would build and benefit the community. He wasn't building monuments to himself. He really wanted to improve the community in which he lived and his children lived. When he was appointed as the vice chairman of the Federal Reserve, he had to sell his Barnett Bank stock because he couldn't be in charge of the country's central bank and own that kind of stock. He used to tell the story. His wife asked him later if he'd been able to keep that stock, how much money would it have been worth? And I think it was about $100 million, give or take. And you know what? He says he doesn't begrudge it one bit. And he thought that his service to the country was so important. The material things weren't. And he just felt he needed to help. The country was in a very traumatic time. In the 1970s, I was a teenager for the bulk of it. You were in these massive recessions. Then you'd go into periods of hyperinflation where, you know, a loaf of bread would be going up 10 cents a day. And he stuck with the chairman, and they went through brutal times in the late 70s and early 80s. And Fred was right at the heart of it.
Let me tell you a great story about Nancy. When I was appointed to the Federal Reserve and I got ready to leave, there was a lot of confusion in my affairs and everything. We had a lot going on and a lot of things that needed to be done, and we were at the airport, and I was saying, now, honey, remember this and remember that, and she said, listen, you just get on the plane, go up to Washington, and run the country, and I'll take care of everything else.
Well, Fred Schultz would certainly rank at the very top of anyone's list of people who have influenced Jacksonville's growth in the latter half of the 20th century and early 21st. He has been there in the leadership and formation of Jacksonville's important initiatives as state legislator and Speaker of the House of Representatives. He has been chairman of the Chamber of Commerce. He was the leader of the all-important 1974 Amelia Island Conference, which resulted in the creation of so many important institutions and initiatives in our community. He has been, of course, the founding chairman of the Schultz Center for Teaching and Leadership. He has been active in the Alliance for World-Class Education. He is an honorary director of Jacksonville Public Education Fund. He has been on everyone's leadership list, and he has responded beautifully and in a very positive manner. He does nothing for the mere show or the mere honor, but rather for the substance and the underlying importance of the contributions that he can make.
Well, I wasn't very effective as a leader until I learned to listen. When I talked too much and didn't listen enough, I didn't get much done. It's just impossible for anyone, no matter how good they are, to develop a good leadership style if it's not based on listening. That's the key.
What is the importance of community trusteeship?
Well, you know, it's the concept of people trying to take ownership of their community and of being willing to put in their time, their talent, their money to work in the community, to help the community move forward. I think it's really kind of important that people zero in on what interests them a great deal. It's vital that you have some vision of what it is you want to do. I think, of course, that's not only the essence of involvement in your community, it's the essence of leadership in your community. If you, you know, it's the people who come after you that make an organization. I've always said it's easy to start organizations. It's hard to make them go right. It's hard to develop a lasting organization. And it's nice to have enough money to support them financially, but it is absolutely not essential that you do that. The essential part is your time and your talents.
Fred, in his way, is very creative, and he would dream of things that could happen, and he made them happen, which most people think of. Maybe they might think of these things, but they think it's impossible. They give up. They don't do it. But he was able to convince people that it's possible to do it. And I mean, just as a small example, when the Cummer something needed to be done to the Cummer. It was a small museum, and it needed help. It needed a vision, and Fred got involved in the Cummer because of me, because of my art, and because I loved the Cummer, and I had been a docent over there. But it never occurred to me that $15 million could be raised, and that other people in the community could be involved in art when they really weren't that interested in art, but they were interested in Jacksonville. And so he was able to do things and inspire other people to work with him. So he couldn't do it all by himself. He had to do it with many, many other men and women in the community that helped him. He also had a wife that was willing to do everything else. You know, I think I've spoiled him.
Of course, what I say is that I've had a wonderful life because I've had a wonderful wife. You know, Warren Buffett said that the most important decision that a man makes in his life is who he marries. And that is absolutely the case. It's been an extraordinary marriage. It really has been an extraordinary marriage. It's the basis for everything that I've done in life. It really is.
What is your favorite song?
My favorite song?
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, I love music, and I have a lot of favorite songs. Mm-hmm. I used to have, when I was young, I used to have some vague ideas about being a song and dance man. And so I know hundreds of songs. It's hard to pick out any single one that I like, but I love some of the old ones that you could, you know, the sort of barbershop type things. And I was singing one this morning, somebody stole my gal. Somebody stole my gal.
Well, there you go.
Somebody stole my pal. Somebody came and took her away. I didn't even know she was leaving. Her kisses I loved so were meant for me, I know. But gee, I know that she would come to me if she could see her broken-hearted, lonesome pal. Somebody stole my gal.
That's great. That's great.
Don't use that.
I'm not.
You can tell I'm tone deaf.
You know, if the reserve board thing didn't work, you could have just, you know.
the community, all of us, are positive about Fred Schultz, because there is no doubt about his intelligence or his integrity. There is no doubt about his commitment to community and commitment to our country.
Some years ago, I became a student of comparative religion, and I read a lot about spiritual matters, and one of the people that I've read is some things by Mother Teresa. She said the most important things in life are love and service. And that has really stuck with me. And I think they're very much intertwined. And I carry things in my wallet that I carry sayings of Benjamin Franklin's. I carry a great prayer of St. Francis of Assisi. And it starts out, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. And then it goes on from there, and it's a prayer, I think, that can really be the foundation for a life. Part of the reason for my reading on spiritual matters is that I have constantly been looking for the meaning of life and to get a better handle on that kind of thing. I think God places us here on earth to do various things, and I just feel like I've been very blessed to have worked on the things that I think God put me here for. There was a period in my life when I had to be very thoughtful when I got cancer and was told I had 6 months to live. Then I took this very harsh chemotherapy, and for some reason it worked. It didn't work for anybody else that took it, but it worked for me. And so I've been given, that was 5 years ago, and I've been given 5 extra years. And so I've spent that time in doing things that I enjoyed and in continuing to look for the meaning of life. And I have the feeling that I've been working on the kinds of things that God wants me to work on. And so I've had a feeling of satisfaction, whether I'm right or wrong. I have that feeling anyway.
You know, he'd gotten this horrible diagnosis, and they gave him a pretty short window to live, like a year or two. And, 3-4 years later, he was still ticking. And I can remember when the diagnosis was, it's this narrow window, he said, I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. And he felt he had life ordered. He had things in the right perspective, and then he kept living. And he joked, he said he prepared himself to die. He then had to spend time to prepare himself to keep living, that it was going to be a longer period of time. And I thought both those reflections were really kind of interesting. I'd be crying and weeping and gnashing of my teeth, and he went into it as just another experience in one's life. I've long said that Fred sort of wrapped his arms around Jacksonville as if it was his own child. He really treated the community like it was family.
He's a selfless leader who loves Jacksonville and the people he wants to serve.
How would you like to be remembered, Fred?
I don't go to church a lot. I do pray some. Generally, I pray because I'm grateful for the fact that I've led such a wonderful life. But I've concentrated on trying to help other people. I just have the feeling that my community is my church. And I'd like to be remembered as someone who had helped this community in a lot of different ways and made it, as I think it will become in the next few years, one of America's great cities.
Frederick H. Schultz was a man who realized early on that to whom much is given, much is expected. His life was made even richer by reaching out and embracing his community, and made our community richer for it.
There was an old joke along those lines about Cecil B. DeMille making the great movie that Charlton Heston was in, and the thousands of extras, and the parting of the waves, and everything else. And they were, you know, Cecil B. DeMille was urging everybody on. And they get all finished, and the cameraman says, "Ready when you are, CB."
Oh, we're going to use that.